Stop lying, Elara. That was the first thing I heard, my younger brother Kieran Vance screaming from the back of the auditorium. His voice cracked, loud enough to make the entire hall fall silent. Then he shouted again, "She doesn't deserve that award! She cheated!" The sound of chairs scraping, gasps filling the air, and whispers exploding like a swarm followed after. Only then did my mind register where I was, on stage, under bright lights, holding a plaque the university had just handed me. My fingers tightened around the award. My smile froze. And the humiliation hit me like a slap. I looked at Kieran, red-faced, shaking, eyes wild in a way only I recognized. The look he always had right before he tried to ruin something for me. He kept going, louder this time, pointing at me like an accuser in a courtroom. "You all think she's perfect? Ask her how she got those results." People turned to me with shock, suspicion, curiosity, all the things I used to fear growing up in the Vance household. My mother looked horrified, but not at him, at me. My father rubbed his forehead like he was exhausted by me again. Classic. I inhaled slowly. I didn't defend myself. I didn't shout back. I had done that when we were kids. It never worked. So this time, I did what he didn't expect. I walked off the center of the stage, calm, steady, slow, and approached the dean. People craned their necks, expecting a breakdown or an admission. Instead, I leaned closer to the dean and whispered one quiet sentence into her ear. Just one. Her eyes widened, her lips pressed together sharply. She straightened her posture like a judge who had just been handed a verdict. Kieran saw her face change. He froze mid-breath. He stuttered. "What did she say?" The dean didn't answer him. She simply lifted a hand, signaling security to stand by. The room felt like the air itself had stopped. My heart was racing, but my steps were steady as I walked back toward the center of the stage, holding my award like a weapon I didn't need to swing, because Kieran wasn't ready for what was coming. Not tonight. Not ever. He thought exposing me was his grand victory. He had no idea that I had already uncovered something much darker, much uglier, something he prayed no one would ever find. But I had found it, and the moment I whispered that secret, the entire power shifted. He just didn't know it yet. That night, in front of everyone, was the moment I realized what Kieran truly was, and what I would have to do next. When people ask how my brother Kieran Vance turned into the kind of person who would publicly try to destroy me, I wish I could say it started recently, but it didn't. It started long before either of us knew what jealousy was. Long before I knew what fairness even meant. Growing up in the Vance household was like living inside a story written for only one child, and it wasn't me. I still remember being 6 years old, holding up a crayon drawing of a galaxy I'd worked on all afternoon. I was proud. Quiet, shy, but proud. I showed it to my parents, expecting the smile every child hopes for. My father barely glanced at it before waving his hand. But the moment Kieran toddled in behind me, holding a messy scribble of blue lines, everyone clapped like he'd painted the Mona Lisa. Mom scooped him up. Dad lifted him onto his shoulders. My drawing ended up on the fridge behind receipts. His stayed there for years. I learned early. If I wanted praise, I had to be exceptional. If Kieran wanted praise, he just had to exist. When I brought home straight A's, my mother would nod politely, then turn to Kieran and ask if he wanted pizza for dinner. When he brought home a C+, she cheered so loudly the neighbors must have heard. Every birthday felt like a shared stage where I was the opening act and he was the main event. My 8th birthday? He blew out my candles before I could even inhale. I spent the rest of the night pretending I didn't care. By the time we were teenagers, the favoritism wasn't subtle anymore. And the worst part? Kieran saw it. He absorbed it. He learned to weaponize it. When he wanted something, my toys, my room, my silence, he knew he had support. He'd say, "Mom, Elara's being mean," and that was enough. No investigation, no hearing my side, just punishment. That's when I started noticing the jealousy. Not loud, not obvious, but there, woven into every glare whenever I achieved something he couldn't. When I joined the science club, he suddenly hated science. When I won a school essay competition, he accidentally spilled juice on the certificate. But I felt it, the shift, the resentment. Not curious, not joking, accusing. I realized then, Kieran didn't want to catch up to me. He wanted to drag me down to where he felt safe. Looking back now, the warning signs were blinking like neon lights, but I was a child who desperately wanted her brother to love her. I didn't know those tiny acts of sabotage were only the beginning. I didn't know what he'd grow into. And I definitely didn't know what he was already planning behind those innocent, jealous eyes. Because years later, I would find out something chilling. Kieran's obsession with destroying me didn't start in adulthood. It started in childhood. Success didn't happen overnight for me. It happened in quiet rooms, under dim lamps, while the rest of my family slept. While Kieran Vance played video games until sunrise, I was memorizing formulas, drafting essays, and building a future no one thought I deserved. When I got accepted into the state's top academic program, I expected at least a small celebration. Instead, my parents glanced at the acceptance letter and said, "That's nice, honey," before rushing off to deal with Kieran's latest crisis. Another failed class, another detention, another teacher complaining about his attitude. They hid his failures like they were family secrets. They polished his image so carefully, you'd think he was royalty. Every time he fell, they put cushions underneath. I didn't brag. I didn't gloat. The first sabotage came quietly. I had spent weeks preparing a research project for a regional competition, detailed charts, models, flash drives full of data. On the morning of the event, everything was gone. The box, the flash drive, the printed reports. My mom shrugged. Kieran probably moved it while cleaning. He hadn't cleaned anything in years, but there he was in the corner, hiding a smirk he didn't bother to conceal. I rebuilt everything from scraps in an hour and still won second place. But I learned something crucial. Kieran wanted to see me scrambling. He wanted to see cracks in the foundation he couldn't break outright. As my academic success continued, internships, scholarships, professors recommending me for advanced programs, his resentment deepened. He failed another semester. He dropped out of a course he swore he would finish. He got caught lying on a resume. Sensitive. That word became a shield he hid behind while sharpening his knives. The second sabotage came when I started my first job at a research firm. I was scheduled to give a presentation that could push me toward a major promotion. The night before, someone emailed my supervisor using my account. An email full of rude comments, trash talk, and a resignation letter at the end. Confused and concerned. Kieran was awake at that hour. I confronted him. It wasn't a denial. It was a warning. I changed my passwords, I locked my files, I stopped leaving anything on the family computer. But even as I protected myself, I could feel it, a shadow forming behind me, a threat growing teeth. Kieran wasn't just jealous anymore. He was becoming invested in my downfall. And the deeper I stepped into success, career offers, glowing evaluations, mentors cheering me on, the darker his gaze became. He wasn't just watching me. He was studying me, looking for weaknesses, waiting for moments to strike. And the worst part? For the first time in my life, something felt wrong. I first noticed it in the smallest, quietest ways, the kind of things you don't take seriously until they start forming patterns. A whispered comment here, a strange look there. I felt something cold move through my spine. I hadn't said that to anyone, not a soul. At first I laughed it off. I told myself people misunderstand things all the time, but the rumor spread like someone was feeding it oxygen. And every time it popped up, I caught one familiar, satisfied face lingering in the background. Kieran Vance, my younger brother, watching me with that unreadable smirk he'd mastered since childhood. I tried to ignore it, to stay calm, to not dig deeper, but he always looked away too fast. A rude, unprofessional message I would never write. My breath caught in my throat. The signature looked like mine. The tone? Absolutely not. And the worst part? The login came from my own IP address. My laptop had been in my room all night. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, when a memory flashed. Kieran standing at my doorway the night before, asking casually if I'd seen his charger. He didn't come for a charger. He came for access. I should have confronted him right then, but something stopped me. Maybe the leftover loyalty of an older sister. Maybe the fear that saying it out loud would make it real. Or maybe I still wanted to believe he wouldn't go that far. But when I came home and found my portfolio drawer slightly open, papers shuffled, files touched, I knew this wasn't my imagination. Someone had taken copies. They weren't even careful. A week later, a professor I deeply respected pulled me aside. My knees nearly buckled. Someone had planted it. Someone had studied my weak spots and struck with precision. And every time my name got dragged through another shadow, I saw the same flicker in Kieran's eyes. Amusement mixed with something darker, something hungry. Still, I stayed silent, maybe out of pride. I didn't want to be dismissed again. I didn't want to be the dramatic sister. So I swallowed my anger, tightened my jaw, and told myself I could fix this on my own. But the sabotage escalated. A document I needed for a major submission vanished from my cloud. My backup drive wouldn't open. And the night before a critical interview, my presentation file mysteriously corrupted. I found Kieran leaning against the hallway wall that night, tapping his phone, humming softly like nothing in the world bothered him. When he met my eyes, the corner of his mouth twitched upward. It wasn't a smile. It was a warning, a message. And for the first time, I felt something unfamiliar, fear of my own brother. I kept quiet, kept working, kept pretending nothing was happening, but inside, the truth was clawing its way to the surface. None of this was coincidence. None of this was harmless sibling rivalry. Someone wanted me to fall apart without ever touching me directly. Someone who knew all my vulnerabilities. Someone I once trusted. Someone who shared my blood. The silence answered for him. I didn't know this was only step one. The night everything unraveled started with a single notification. An email blasted to my entire department with my name in the subject line. I opened it, heart thumping, and felt the ground tilt beneath me. Attached was a folder of evidence, screenshots, altered documents, twisted messages, each one designed to make me look dishonest, manipulative, and unethical. Every image, every file, all expertly edited. And the sender's name burned into the header like a brand, Elara Vance. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The room spun, my hands trembled, and all I could hear was the faint ringing in my ears. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. He wanted to destroy me publicly. He wanted an audience this time. And he got one. When I arrived home, the living room was packed. My parents, a few relatives, neighbors who just happened to drop by. Eyes turned toward me like I was a criminal walking into a courtroom. My mother's voice cracked before I even sat down. "Elara, how could you do this?" That word, saw, stabbed harder than the accusation itself. Saw what? The lies he created? Kieran stood behind the couch, arms crossed, face arranged into the perfect mask of concern. When our eyes met, he shook his head slowly, like he was disappointed, like he was the victim. It was a performance so polished it made my stomach twist. "I didn't do any of this," I whispered. My voice felt too small for the moment, too fragile. But the room erupted instantly. My father snapped, "So Kieran is lying?" Every word felt like a slap, each one pushing me further into the corner he had created for me. Kieran kept his gaze lowered, playing the wounded younger brother, flinching whenever someone spoke sharply, as if he were the one being wronged. It was brilliant. Cruel, but brilliant. I tried to explain the edits, the inconsistencies, the impossible timestamps, but no one listened. They didn't want the truth. They wanted the easy story, and the easy story was that the daughter who had always been too ambitious finally slipped up. At one point, My mother touched Kieran's shoulder protectively, physically shielding him from me, and something inside my chest cracked. That small gesture, that instinctive loyalty, hurt more than the lies. I realized then that in this house, his tears would always weigh more than my truth. Kieran finally spoke, soft, shaky, calculated. His voice broke on cue. People gasped. My father shook his head like he'd failed as a parent. And I just stood there, numb, watching the brother I once protected burn me in front of the people I loved. Something icy settled in my spine then. Not rage, not defeat, but clarity. The kind that comes when the last illusion shatters. He didn't want an apology. He didn't want attention. He wanted me destroyed. I lifted my head slowly. "These aren't my secrets," I said quietly. No one believed me. Not that night. Not yet. But deep inside, beneath the humiliation, beneath the betrayal, beneath the ache of being abandoned again by the people I trusted most, a single thought lit up like a flame. I would find the truth. I didn't sleep the night after the accusation. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail, every expression on Kieran's face, every whispered judgment from the people who claimed to love me. By sunrise, something in me hardened. If everyone believed the lie, then I'd have to uncover the truth myself. And this time, I wouldn't hesitate or soften just because the enemy shared my last name. I started with the email he sent. I examined metadata, timestamps, IP logs, details most people ignored. And right there, buried under layers of manipulation, was the first crack in his masterpiece. The screenshots he made were taken minutes apart, yet the email timestamps were hours off. It didn't prove innocence, but it proved orchestration. Someone had spent time creating this. Someone named Elara Vance. The more I analyzed, the more inconsistencies surfaced. Edits that weren't aligned, fonts that didn't match, shadows that fell wrong, clumsy mistakes from someone who thought he was smarter than he was. But knowing wasn't enough. I needed proof that others would believe. That's when I reached out to the last person I ever thought I would, Jonah Hale. We studied together in college before our lives drifted apart. Now he worked in cybersecurity. And when he picked up my call, he sounded surprised, but warm. The first hint of kindness I'd felt in days. "Elara, are you all right? Your voice..." I didn't bother pretending. "I need your help." Jonah didn't ask for details. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small thread of safety. His apartment was dim, cluttered with tech equipment and half-assembled projects. It smelled like coffee and old computers. When I handed him the USB filled with Kieran's evidence, he raised an eyebrow. "This is extensive." I swallowed. As Jonah dug deeper, I watched the lines of his concentration sharpen. Every few minutes, he'd murmur something technical I didn't fully understand. But the tension in his shoulders told me enough. He wasn't finding innocence. He was finding intent. At one point, he stopped typing, eyes narrowing at something on the screen. "Elara, this isn't just edited. This is assembled from different devices." My pulse quickened. "Yes." He paused. I held my breath. He clicked a few windows open, ran a few commands, and leaned back. "It was taken from a device inside your parents' house." A chill spread through me, slow and paralyzing. He didn't just frame me. He used the house I grew up in to do it. Our childhood home, our supposed safe place, had been his workshop of destruction. But Jonah wasn't done. "Elara, there's more." My heartbeat kicked up. He turned the monitor toward me. There, in a long list of files, was a folder named with a date that didn't mean anything to anyone else, but meant everything to me. It was the date of my biggest academic award, the night Kieran had disappeared halfway through the ceremony. My mouth went dry. That folder had my name on it. Not just my name, my full name. Elara Vance. Master file. I stared at it, the letters blurring. This wasn't random sabotage. This wasn't impulse, rivalry, or frustration. This was a project, a long-term plan, a curated archive of every tool he intended to use against me. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I felt sick. All those little accidents, all those minor sabotages I convinced myself were coincidences. They were part of this. Jonah glanced at me gently. The room felt colder. My chest felt hollow, like something vital had been scooped out. And as I stared at that folder, those words, that date, that name, I realized the truth wasn't just darker than I imagined. It was personal. Very, very personal. I leaned forward, voice barely a whisper. Because whatever was inside, I knew it would change everything. When Jonah clicked the folder open, I felt my entire body tense. I didn't blink, I didn't breathe. I just stared as hundreds of files flooded the screen. Screenshots, password logs, email drafts, recordings, notes written in a sloppy, frantic handwriting I knew better than my own. Kieran Vance had documented everything like he was building a case for a war only he understood. The first file Jonah opened was a screen capture of my bank login page. But the timestamp wasn't mine. It was from a night when I'd been out with coworkers. I felt heat rush up my spine. Kieran had accessed my accounts. He'd tried multiple passwords. Jonah zoomed in, highlighting the attempts. My birthday. My graduation year. Even the nickname only my grandmother used. He had guessed them all, one after another, until he finally got in. I felt nauseous. This wasn't brotherly jealousy anymore. This was obsession. Jonah clicked another file. A spreadsheet appeared, full of entries, dates, times, short notes. "Look," he said, voice low. My chest tightened. He had been doing this for years, quietly, patiently, strategically dismantling every success I tried to build. Every time I doubted myself, every time things went wrong for no reason, it wasn't fate. It wasn't bad luck. It was him, Kieran Vance, my own brother. But the worst was yet to come. Jonah opened a video file. I froze when I saw Kieran's face filling the screen. He was pacing in his room, muttering to himself while adjusting camera angles. "They think she's perfect," he hissed, "but she's not. She gets everything." My stomach twisted as he continued. "I'll leak these slowly. One wrong move from her, and everyone will believe it's real." Hearing his voice, hearing the bitterness, raw, poisonous, made my skin crawl. He wasn't just envious. He wanted to ruin me completely. I didn't want to see it, but I couldn't look away. Inside were forged documents with my signature, loans I never took, requests I never wrote, statements designed to make me look careless and fraudulent. He hadn't just tried to shame me publicly. He was preparing to make me legally liable for things I didn't even know existed. Jonah exhaled sharply. "Elara, this is identity theft. This is actual criminal fraud. If you take this to the authorities..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to, because he opened one last file, and everything inside the room disappeared for a second. Reading the first few lines felt like being stabbed slowly. Access her financials, leak fake scandal, manipulate family, public humiliation, blame her emotional instability, record reaction. Confirm downfall. Every item was checked except the last two. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I curled my fingers into fists, forcing myself to stay steady. He didn't just try to expose me. He tried to erase me, erase my life, my work, my identity. And all this time, he acted like he was the victim. I stared at the glowing screen, at the mountain of proof he created with his own hands. The very files he meant to use against me were the files that would destroy him. When I finally managed to speak, my voice wasn't trembling. It was calm, cold, clear. I walked into my parents' living room with a silence so sharp it cut the air. My mother looked up from the couch, confused. My father lowered his newspaper, already sensing something was wrong. And Kieran, he froze mid-step at the sight of the folder in my hand. He knew. He knew exactly what I was holding. My mom frowned. "Elara?" I didn't answer. Instead, I placed my laptop on the coffee table, turned it toward them, and opened the first file. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father sat forward, disbelief tightening every line in his face. Kieran lunged toward the laptop. "Turn it off! You don't understand!" I stepped in front of him, not touching him, just blocking the way with a calmness he wasn't expecting. "Sit down," I said. The authority in my voice startled everyone, including me. And for the first time in years, Kieran obeyed. I clicked through the evidence one piece at a time. The password attempts, the bank logins, the forged documents, the emails he deleted. My father's voice cracked. Kieran's face was pale, sweat beading along his hairline. "I didn't mean, it wasn't, you always praised her." His words echoed through the room, wild and desperate. So that was his truth. My mother shook her head, tears falling silently. "We never wanted you to compete with her." He laughed sharply, almost unhinged. "She always had everything. She got the grades, the scholarships, the awards." I stepped closer, feeling the old wounds pulse beneath my ribs. "You think I didn't struggle? You think my success was easy? You think I didn't pay for it? You had love handed to you, every excuse made for you, every mistake forgiven." His eyes burned with a mix of shame and resentment. I clicked to the next video, the one where he practiced framing me for financial fraud. My father slammed his fist down. "That's enough." Kieran stood abruptly, pointing at me, voice cracking. "She planned this." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Kieran, these are your files, your recordings, your plans, your handwriting." His panic grew frantic. "Delete it, Elara, please, we're family." He turned to my father. "Dad, say something." The room fell silent. It wasn't anger now. It was grief. Kieran stumbled backward like he'd been struck. He looked at me as if I'd taken his life away, even though he was the one who tried to take mine apart piece by piece. He whispered, barely audible, "Elara, don't do this." I held his gaze, steady and cold. His breath hitched, fear replacing fury. For the first time, he understood what came next. My mother cried quietly. My father sank into his chair. Kieran stood trembling in the center of the room. And I closed the laptop slowly, deliberately. The final blow was coming, and he knew it. The morning they took Kieran in, the sky was painfully bright. One of those crisp, quiet days that feel too clean for what's about to happen. I stood on the steps of the administrative building where everything began, holding the folder of evidence against him. My hands weren't shaking anymore. For the first time in months, maybe years, they were completely steady. He looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept all night. Maybe he hadn't. His eyes darted everywhere. Corners, exits, windows, like he was searching for a last-minute escape. But there wasn't one. The investigator greeted us inside, her expression unreadable as she motioned him to sit. "Mr. Vance, we've reviewed the materials your sister submitted." He flinched. Even hearing the words out loud broke something in him. He opened his mouth to respond, but the investigator didn't give him the chance. She turned on the monitor, displaying the files he'd thought he'd erased. His own plans, his own voice, his own messages. Every secret door he believed he had locked was wide open. He paled so fast it looked like the blood drained straight through the floor. "This is taken out of context," he whispered, clinging to the last fragile thread of denial. But the investigator wasn't entertained. "The timestamps match your devices, the IP logs match your home network. The handwriting is yours." He stared at the screen like it was a mirror showing him the version of himself he'd pretended didn't exist. I didn't say a word. He looked at me anyway, like begging me to intervene, to save him, to be the sister he had never been a brother to. "Elara," he murmured, voice cracking. I held his gaze, calm and unmoving. "Kieran, you meant every step." He swallowed hard, shoulders collapsing as the investigator pressed play again. The investigator paused the video. My father closed his eyes in shame. My mother bit her lips so hard it bled. Kieran scrubbed his palms over his face, desperate and sinking. He whispered, "You're ruining my life." That was the moment I finally spoke with a steady, emotionless voice. His mouth opened, but no sound came. He had no defense left, not one thread to cling to. When campus security entered the room, he panicked. "Wait, please, this can't be public." But they did, and it was. They escorted him through the building where students and faculty whispered his name. They watched the once charming golden boy stumble, wrists shaking, humiliation soaking into his skin. The same hallway where he once humiliated me was now witnessing his fall. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But inside there was a quiet shift, a deep exhale my body had been holding for years. Outside, reporters waited with questions. Students filmed. Lecturers exchanged glances. And Kieran Vance, for the first time in his life, realized what true exposure felt like. My father tried to shield him, but the damage was done. The truth had come out, fully, ruthlessly, undeniably. As they pulled him into the car, he looked at me through the window, eyes red, face blotched, a defeated shell of the boy who spent years trying to destroy me. I didn't raise a hand. I didn't offer comfort. I simply watched. The calmness inside me wasn't triumph. It was closure. The investigator stepped beside me. "We'll contact you soon." Her tone carried weight, something heavy, decisive. And as the car carrying Kieran disappeared down the road, I felt it, the calm before the finale. The weeks after Kieran's downfall felt unreal, quiet in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Not peaceful quiet, more like the silence that settles after a storm destroys everything and leaves you staring at the wreckage, wondering how long it was building. I woke up one morning and realized there was nothing left for me to defend, nothing left to fear, nothing left to explain. The truth had done all the talking. My parents reached out almost immediately. My mother called every evening, her voice soft, trembling, filled with apologies she clearly rehearsed in front of a mirror. My father came in person, standing outside my apartment door with a guilt so heavy it seemed to bow his shoulders. They brought explanations, excuses, memories of good intentions they clung to like lifelines. But intentions don't erase consequences. I let them in, but I did not let them close. Not anymore. Every time they said, "We didn't know," a part of me wanted to scream, "You didn't want to know." Instead, I just nodded, offering gentle smiles that didn't reach my eyes. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't warm either. I existed somewhere in between, present but unreachable. Distance had become a kind of healing. Kieran, meanwhile, disappeared from the world. His accounts were suspended. His name circulated in administrative hearings. Whispers followed him everywhere. Whispers he once crafted for me. My parents shielded me from updates, thinking it would hurt me. They didn't understand that I had already done my grieving long ago. The brother I wished I had didn't exist. The one who tried to ruin me had been exposed. Closure wasn't loud. It wasn't triumphant. It arrived quietly, like the moment you realize a wound has stopped bleeding. I spent nights alone on my balcony, feeling myself breathe fully for the first time. My life was mine again. My future, mine again. The world felt bigger without the weight of constant sabotage pressing into my spine. I looked at her, calm. "No, hate keeps you tied to people," she cried, thinking my words were harsh. But they weren't. They were the most honest thing I'd said in years. They praised my strength. They apologized for not seeing through him. They told me I deserved better. But respect given late always feels like borrowed time. I accepted it with quiet politeness, nothing more. My life moved forward. New projects, new friends, new peace. I didn't rebuild the bridge between me and my family. I simply stopped standing on the ashes of the old one. The last time I saw Kieran was during a mandatory review hearing. He wouldn't look at me. His shoulders were slumped, his confidence gone. His arrogance melted into something almost unrecognizable. For a second, just one, I wondered who he might have been if jealousy hadn't hollowed him out. I stared back at him, my voice calm enough to make him flinch. "I didn't destroy you, Kieran." He didn't respond. Maybe he finally understood. Now, months later, I live without fear, without manipulation, without the constant ache of being betrayed by the person who should have grown beside me instead of against me. Healing didn't arrive all at once, but piece by piece, I stitched myself back together. And in the quiet of my new life, I found something I never expected: strength without anger, clarity without bitterness, freedom without guilt. People still ask me what happened, how it ended, how I feel about the brother who tried so hard to break me. I always give the same simple, steady answer.